Hi, it's me again, Dave Jacobs of Small Church Pastor. You're listening to Mini Pod. No fluff, just good stuff in under 5 minutes. I've got a confession to make. I'm biased. There, I said it. I don't feel altogether comfortable saying it, but it's true. I like the word perspective, better, but this word is too nice. It lets me off the hook when it comes to recognizing the bias that I bring to so many important issues. My perspective is shaped by my bias. Think of bias as the events, the experiences of your past that have shaped how you think about people, places, things, church, theology, denominations, or politics. Let me give you an example just from my own life. I'm a white, middle-class male living in North America. This has created a bias in me. When I became a Christian, I attended white evangelical churches. This created a bias in me. I was a pastor for 30 years. This created a bias in me. I would pastor churches influenced by the Calvary Chapel movement and later become a vineyard pastor. This created a bias in me. I pastored smaller churches. This created a bias in me. I've been hurt by people in the church that I pastored. Who hasn't? But this created a bias in me. And I work as a pastoral coach to pastors of smaller churches. This has created a bias in me, a certain perspective that I have. Now, you might be an egalitarian or a complementarian. You might be a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. You might be a progressive Christian or a conservative Christian. You might be a welcoming and affirming church or welcoming but not affirming church or non-welcoming and non-affirming church in regards to the LGBTQ plus community. You might be a premillennialist, a post-millennialist, an all-millennialist. Your communion table may be open or closed. Maybe you ordain women, maybe not. You might baptize infants or not. You might believe that the Bible is inerrant or infallible or both or none of the above. I could come up with a list that would go on and on and on. My point is that you believe the things you do because of your bias. And your bias is the result of the events and experiences in your past that have shaped how you think. Now, I know that someone is going to respond to this and say, well, my only bias is the Bible, And it's like, yeah, I get that. Everybody thinks their bias is the Bible. And there is a certain degree of truth to that. Everybody in the church today that disagrees on certain very important biblical points or issues, they all think that they get that from the Bible, and yet they still can't agree on things. Now, just because you're biased doesn't mean that you're wrong. You have a bias, though, which is a lens through which you see things. And it can be very helpful as we try to make progress in our lives to be able to recognize our bias and maybe at times even reconsider our bias. And it can be very helpful as we try to lead people that we understand our bias and attempt to understand the bias of others. Once again, remember that just because someone is biased doesn't mean that they're lying to you, doesn't mean that they're wrong. It's just their bias, and it's important that we understand that as we try to lead our own lives and as we try to lead other people. I hope that if you enjoyed this, you'd hit the like button at the bottom there and subscribe. And before I go, I want you to know that my latest book, Pithy, 1,200 Ideas and Observations from 15 years of reading and thinking and coaching pastors, it's out. It's on Amazon. You can also get your Kindle version of it. Go over there as soon as you get off here and buy it. It's going to be a book that I think you're going to be able to use in a lot of different ways in your personal life, in your ministry, and hopefully you're going to enjoy it. If you do, leave a little review of it there on Amazon. This is Dave Jacobs of Small Church Pastor. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week.